Listen at 610 AM, 102 FM.
I listen, therefore I know.
Online at kvnutalk.com and on the KVNU mobile app.
I listen on the app.
KVNU News Time is 5:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by the Duck Hunter. A 23-year-old Logan man has been sentenced to prison after a jury previously found him guilty of raping a woman following a party more than 2.5 years ago. Zachary S. Miller asked for mercy, telling the court he was sorry for living a reckless life fueled by sex and alcohol. Miller was sentenced during a virtual hearing in First District Court this morning. He was previously convicted of one count of object rape, a first-degree felony. In March 2019, Logan City Police were called to the Cache Valley Hospital after the victim reported being sexually assaulted inside her home. The woman explained how a group of friends, including Miller, were at her house following a party at another residence. The group stayed through the evening while consuming alcohol. The victim reported that she went to her bedroom around 4 a.m. The next morning to sleep. She stated that she had taken a sleeping pill to help her rest longer. Just over two hours later, the woman woke up to find Miller had come into her bedroom. He had gotten into her bed and was raping her. The woman told detectives she never consented to Miller's advances. In November, a jury found Miller guilty following a 2-day trial. It included testimony from the victim and other witnesses, except for the defendant, who declined to take the witness stand. During Monday's sentencing, defense attorney Michael Holge explained that Miller still believed his relationship with the victim was consensual. He asked the court to consider probation instead of prison, explaining how the defendant had already lost his job and likely his future career plans to be a pilot because of the crime. Miller said he was ashamed for the bad choices he had made. He expressed remorse, stating he was truly sorry for losing a great friend. Cache County Deputy Attorney Ronnie Keller opposed Holge's request for probation. He said Miller's reckless life had led to the victimization of multiple women. Judge Brandon Maynard ordered Miller to be transferred to the Utah State Prison and begin serving a sentence of 5 years to life. He allowed credit, though, for time already served, but the exact length Miller is incarcerated will be determined by the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole. KVNU News Time is 5:07. KVNU weather, mostly cloudy tonight, haze this evening. 40% chance of snow after midnight. Overnight low 15 to 20. South winds 10 to 20 miles an hour late tonight. And then snow Tuesday morning, snow likely in the afternoon. Little or no accumulation. High temperature in the lower 30s. Snow likely Tuesday night and snow after midnight. Accumulation up to 2 inches. Well, it's been colder than what we're expecting our overnight low tonight to be. It's only been to 14. Right now it is 13 degrees at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Roof Rescue. Most of us don't think about our roofs until we see shingles on the ground or water drips through the ceiling. Keep your roof in tip-top shape by working with Roof Rescue. They'll take the time to assess, explain, and work out financial obligations with your insurance. Roof Rescue, providing watertight peace of mind.
How often should you change the filter on your furnace? A lot of people are surprised when they find out that most filters are only good for 60 to 90 days. Some cheaper filters won't even last that long. If you buy a good quality filter, you should still have it checked or replaced every year. Doing this will make sure your furnace runs more efficiently and keep the air that you breathe cleaner. For a free consultation, call the Duct Hunter, 770-4813.
KVNU News Time is 5:09. A woman was arrested at Salt Lake City Airport after reportedly causing a disturbance. Police said they arrived to gate A14 on December 31st, where the airline was deplaning all passengers to remove 30-year-old Jacqueline Fleury. KUTV reports Fleury was yelling at and arguing with an airline supervisor. According to a probable cause statement, the airline revoked her flying privileges and refunded her fare. Fleury then began to argue with officers, they said, when they advised her to leave the area as she was no longer a ticketed passenger. Police reported that Fleury did not follow their command. She took her ID from an officer's hand and refused to leave. It was determined Fleury would be arrested for disorderly conduct due to the fact that she caused a disturbance and refused to leave the area. The documents added that Fleury was only handcuffed by forcing her hands behind her back, and she kicked an assisting officer in his leg while moving her to a patrol vehicle. Fleury was booked into the Salt Lake County Jail on charges of assaulting a peace officer, disorderly conduct after request to stop, and interference with an arresting officer. And the new year is off to a hopeful start with the state's snowpack almost entirely above average. Glenn Merrill, a hydrologist with the National Weather Service, Salt Lake City, told Fox 13 that we've had an exceptional 3-week period with statewide heavy snow, and now we're currently sitting at 128% of normal snowpack for the state. As of Sunday, the Weber-Ogden area is barely there, sitting at just 99%. Beaver and southeastern Utah are doing a fantastic job with both levels above 180%. Merrill explained that typically on a normal year, averaged over the last 30 years, we don't reach these levels until mid to late January. Last year, we didn't reach those levels until mid-February. Merrill said if Utah wants to overcome the drought, the state needs more storms. It doesn't take one exceptional storm cycle to overcome the drought that Utah is in, however. Merrill said the state is better now than where it was last year. KVNU News Time is 5:11. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
News Talk KVNU.
Tuesday edition, Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show will be joined by Senator and Dr. Rand Paul to talk about the latest when it comes to big tech censorship and also the COVID data from his perspective. Plus, Buck.
We've got the January 6th insurrection extravaganza coverage from CNN and others this week. What are they trying to accomplish with it, and are they just hoping to cover up for all of Biden's failures with distraction? We'll get into that on the Clay and Buck Show.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM at 610 AM.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Over 2.8 million Americans have served in our military since 9/11. Many have returned home with devastating injuries and few resources for them and their families. This is news correspondent Bob Woodruff. I sustained a life-threatening injury while reporting from Iraq in 2006. The military had my back that day, and they have each other's while serving. It's time we had theirs. Please join us as part of the Got Your Six initiative. To learn more, go to gotyoursix.org using the number 6.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Hour 2 of today's show. Our first show of the year. Happy 2022, everyone. I hope the holidays or the break or the weather or something is treating you right. I don't think this weather's treating anyone right. It was below zero in certain parts of northern Utah earlier this morning. About 5 degrees when I first checked the temperature today. A little chilly out there. Going to warm up, though, so fingers crossed. And the days are getting longer. It's official. We are headed towards that favorite time of the year for me, those long summer days. So a lot of things to look forward to. Again, first show of 2022, and it has been a pretty busy day in the news cycle here in Utah. I don't know if everyone coordinated this, planned this, what have you, but either way, we just had a slew of stories with Northern Utah ties or Northern Utah focus, and we're going to try to get to all of it this hour as much as we can. Big announcement from Utah House Speaker Brad Wilson coming over the weekend, and it is going to involve Utah State University, northern Utah, the Bear River area specifically, or Bear River Water District specifically, and more. This is a planned summit on the Great Salt Lake. House Speaker Brad Wilson, Republican from Taylorsville, will be hosting this summit this Wednesday, January 5th, starting at 8 a.m. at the Davis Conference Center. The public is invited, but the goal of this is more to host this event and bring together a panel of experts. The event will be live streaming on the House. Let me double check that. Yes, on the House Facebook page. They are setting up a specific event page for the Great Salt Lake Summit. Again, it is this Wednesday, 8 a.m. to noon at the Davis Conference Center there in Layton. Public is invited. This is a free event, and the list of speakers is long. The description from the press release reads, Speaker Brad Wilson presents the Great Salt Lake Summit. You'll be able to watch virtually on the Great Salt Lake Summit event page, where they'll live stream the panel itself. But the speaker is bringing together scientists, environmental advocates, and industry leaders to join state lawmakers and discuss possible policy solutions to ensure the Great Salt Lake is preserved for future generations. This comes on the heels, of course, the lake hitting the lowest recorded level ever last summer. That was first set in 1963 and is not the record. And we beat that record last summer. I think it was about July. So a lot of things contribute to this. Of course, the drought last summer was the biggest contributor for that year, but the Great Salt Lake has been facing some challenges for many years. And a lot of that has to do with water development in the tributaries to the lake, which most actually are here in the Bear River Water District. So decisions we make can impact the lake, but decisions that can be made along the Wasatch Front by industry leaders, there's a lot of money in the lake in a lot of different ways, and decisions they make have impacted the lake over the years as well. The Great Salt Lake, of course, one of the largest lakes of its type in the world, and the idea of it being in danger has attracted global attention. Climate change, drought, water diversion from water projects have all had a pretty significant impact over the years, and the continuously receding waters are a threat to the people living along the Wasatch Front, wildlife. The ecology of the entire northern half of the state is in one way or another tied to the Great Salt Lake. One of the concerns immediately is that with more exposed lake bed, and this will be presented as part of the research discussed by the panel this Wednesday at this Great Salt Lake Summit. Research done at Utah State University showing two things. One, that with no surprise here, we didn't have to research this. This is a known. When you have more exposed lake bed, that lake bed eventually dries out, and then wind stirs that dust around, basically spreads it around here in Utah, the entire northern part of the state. And those dust storms will increase as more lake bed is exposed. But then the dust storms themselves, research from Utah State University shows, presents two unique risks in its own way. One, most of the dust is toxic, not something you want in your air or your lungs. So that's going to make our inversion days even worse. Research showed, but the same set of research from Utah State University's College of Natural Resources, again, that will be discussed on Wednesday, showed that the dust from these dust storms, so you have more lake bed exposed as the water levels diminish, and the dust then enters the air. A lot of it's toxic. It's then in our lungs, makes the inversion days even worse, more dangerous. But then the dust settles at a certain point when the winds die down. And a lot of that dust settles on the snowpack in our mountains. Well, the dust, being a darker color than the snow, attracts more heat and causes snowpack to melt more quickly. So one of the concerns presented by this research is that there has been significant evidence that the increased dust from the already embattled Great Salt Lake before last year's drought even, was settling on the snow and causing our snowpack to be depleted faster than it normally would be. Lake effect snow can also diminish, so a lot of the mountains around the lake itself that also are part of our water picture overall are going to get less snow as there's less lake. So there are a lot of different challenges here, and the Speaker of the House said that his goal at this event on Wednesday is not to necessarily come up with solutions. That would be impossible, but to discuss potential policy changes that lawmakers can make in this upcoming legislative session, also to generally educate the public and lawmakers, bringing all of these experts together. Speaker Wilson said, everyone in the state recognizes the importance and the impact of the Great Salt Lake on our climate, our economy, our quality of life, and there are some definite risks we need to be aware of. Speaker Wilson has said in previous comments, not in this press release, but previous comments about the lake, he said that lawmakers have enjoyed a long period of time in which they could just kind of put their head in the sand or their head in the toxic lake bed dust, if you will, about the Great Salt Lake and some of the challenges that were being presented to them by environmental groups. The reality is, Speaker Wilson says, this is the reality, and something needs to be done. The announcement of the summit coming up this Wednesday received applause from members of USU's College of Natural Resources, who again have been researching this for years and trying to sound certain alarms on the Great Salt Lake, but also one of the largest environmental groups created with the lake in mind, Friends of the Great Salt Lake, sent out a press release of their own saying this is one, long overdue, and two, very welcome. One of the spokespeople for the Friends of Great Salt Lake organization, Lynn DeFreitas, said, I commend Speaker Wilson for taking the initiative to plan something like this, but DeFreitas said she wanted to see concrete plans come out of not just this summit, but the upcoming legislative session in the hopes that something will actually be done. She said, I'm all for it. It's definitely needed. We definitely need to identify ways we can address the situation with the Great Salt Lake and it reaching a historic low last summer, but other things as well. She said, what I'm hoping will come of this summit is a specific action plan, items that will be implemented in a timely manner, whereby in short order, early 2022, we have an opportunity to really do something meaningful for the lake regarding its need of water and getting the system back into a viable state. It's going to be interesting to watch this play out. Speaker Wilson said, these efforts will take years, but they've had years to ignore them. So now is the time, he says. The Speaker of the House, of course, can set an agenda of sorts when it comes to the legislative session. So this is also the Speaker of the House kind of announcing to the general public, hey, this is a priority issue of mine, which means there will be bills. What they are, who knows? It might just be a bill saying we're putting a pause on water development for the next couple of years while we take a look at this and look at our options. It might be something more than that. They might institute some funding for mitigation efforts where wildlife habitat has been destroyed by loss of lake itself. Speaker Wilson said in the press release, I think you'll hear a lot about conservation, and that's key. But we also need to talk about water rights, about agriculture, about different strategies we can use, and the importance of getting serious about this in ways we haven't so far. So again, that event is coming up this Wednesday, 8 a.m. to noon at the Davis Convention Center, which is in Layton. I've posted a link to the address for that and also a link to the event itself. You can find this on Facebook. The event page is just titled The Great Salt Lake Summit, set up by the Utah House majority, the Republican majority there in the Utah House of Representatives, and Speaker Brad Wilson leading the charge on this one. 8 a.m. to noon on Wednesday, January 5th. They will be providing us, I reached out to them about this, they will be providing us some live video and audio feeds for this event. So we'll have some highlights for you on the show on Wednesday. But definitely one to keep an eye on. If you can't make it down there, understandable. The weather's not supposed to be great on Wednesday. Take a second to watch if you can, Wednesday morning until noon. And then if all of that isn't an option, we'll bring you some highlights on the show Wednesday afternoon for this Great Salt Lake Summit. The first of what Speaker Wilson said is going to be an ongoing, years-long discussion about protecting the Great Salt Lake. Speaking of the research that I mentioned that will be a part of the discussion on Wednesdays during that summit in Davis County, some of that research comes right out of Utah State University. If you'd like to see more about that, Stokes Nature Center has a great video of a past Canyon Conversations lecture. These did happen regularly pre-COVID every Saturday morning, and one of them included Utah State University Natural Resources Professor Wayne Wurzbach, and he talked about the Great Salt Lake itself and his effort to study. He studies marine ecosystems and has done so throughout a lengthy career at other universities even. And he said that recently he'd been concentrating his studies entirely on the Great Salt Lake. And during that lecture, which again you can see in the archived video on the Stokes Nature Center YouTube channel, during that lecture he talked about two main threats that his research drums up again and again. The drying of the Great Salt Lake and the what's known as eutrophication of the water, as there is less water and it's a shallow lake, and then we have high temperatures in the summer, exposed lake bed stirring dust into the air, which also has an effect on lake temperatures in the end. Basically, he said his research shows in the end you have an increase of certain nutrients in the water, which actually causes a very dense plant and algae growth, an algae bloom. The problem is, he said, the Great Salt Lake, its makeup, it can't afford a big algae bloom. That would basically decimate the ecosystem of the Great Salt Lake and everything that makes it what it is. Great Salt Lake, again, is largest lake west of the Mississippi, and according to Wurzbach's research, he said, an estimated economic value to the state of Utah of about $1.3 billion a year. That's how much money is made off of the lake through various industries. There's a lot, brine, shrimp, salt, things like that. And it contributes over $57 million, brine shrimp alone, $57 million to Utah's economy each and every year. But Wurzbach said, even more importantly, the Great Salt Lake is the center point of northern Utah's ecology. 2.5 million birds visit the lake annually, it's estimated, and Wurzbach explained the economic importance of that, and I guess more alarming, the effect on the economy should those birds stop coming, which Wurzbach said they could. They have other options. They stop coming here, it sets off an imbalance in the ecosystem, at which point many of the things that make our life of the quality that it is cease to happen. So Wurzbach sounding the alarm on this for a couple of years now. His research will be presented as part of the discussion this Wednesday. Again, that's 8 a.m. to noon at the Davis Convention Center. The Speaker of the House, Republican lawmaker Brad Wilson, hosting the first ever Great Salt Lake Summit. I've posted all the details on our Facebook page, including links to some of the research that will be presented and discussed by this panel on Wednesday. And then you can listen via the Facebook event page, the Great Salt Lake Summit, that event page called. If you can't do any of those things, can't make it there in person Wednesday morning, can't listen online, we'll have some highlights for you here on the show Wednesday afternoon. And we'll be back with more of KVN News for the People today, right after this.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology is Cache Valley's most trusted name in hearing aid technology. Schedule a free consultation with Dr. Paul Daines by calling 753-HEAR or visit cachehearing.com.
Bring back what you've been missing. Bring back Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology.
What makes essential workers essential?
We build safe roads for you to drive on.
We harvest fresh produce for your families to eat.
We help you heal when you're sick.
We get you where you need to go.
We keep where you work and live clean and safe.
We make sure you get what you need to make your household work.
You're the essential workers who help our nation run. You're in every city, town, and corner of our country, and you come from all over the globe. And you have essential protections under the law. I'm Marty Walsh, the The Wage and Hour Division at the Department of Labor helps ensure you receive the essential protections you deserve. If you have questions about your pay or about your job protection during an illness, visit our website or call 866-4US-WAGE. That's 866-487-9243. We can provide help in more than 200 languages.
Brought to you by the United States Department of Labor.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. Capitol Police have patched some flaws in their security since last January's attack, but one question remains unanswered. Could it happen again? Also, forecasters believe companies will continue hiring despite the surging Omicron variant. We'll examine the job market and money tasks to take off your to-do list, like tracking spending. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Some trivia shared by Utah Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson yesterday, something I didn't know. I thought I knew all of the cool trivia stories from here in Utah, but Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson yesterday tweeting that 110 years ago, yesterday, the first ever all-female mayor and town council took office in Kanab, Utah. I didn't know this, they were elected as a cruel joke. Everyone in town decided to elect an all-woman mayor and town council on a lark because it had never been done before, and of course attitudes towards women at the time were what they were. Everyone thought this would be really funny, but here's where the joke backfired on all the men. The women elected to the, again, first ever all-female mayor and town council in Kanab, Utah, actually served out their terms and were extremely popular. In fact, in the next go-round, it was difficult for incumbents to, previous incumbents didn't beat them. So the joke backfired in Kanab, Utah, when this all-female mayor and town council was elected 110 years ago yesterday. The people of the town thought they took care of some things, some problems that had been kicked down the road again and again, some politics that had crept into town business that the public didn't like. They found that it went away when these women were voted in again as a joke, and then decided to keep at least some of them. Kanab kept 3 of the 5 incumbents in the next municipal elections. So I thought that was pretty cool. By the way, Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson also said this week a record number of women will become mayors in Utah, building on the legacy of these ladies from Kanab 110 years ago yesterday. Check it out. She also posted a photo of the women as they were sworn in, and she's right. This week, women will be sworn in as mayors in Utah, setting a record number for women leading cities throughout the state of Utah. Check it out. I've linked to it on our Facebook page, and it is just kind of a cool photo to see one way or another. But 110 years ago yesterday, that's a pretty big deal. Another bit of news today. This was interesting to me because, this shouldn't come as a surprise, but, man, they wasted no time. It is official. The Alleyism for Utah campaign and the Becky Edwards for Utah campaign making it official today, filing to collect signatures ahead of the, I think it's March 17th candidate filing deadline. That's the last day someone can file to be a candidate here in Utah. Both Edwards and Ism are running as Republicans against Senator Mike Lee. They plan to run against him both in the caucus convention system and, as again was made evident today with their filing, they both plan to collect signatures. Becky Edwards, in fact, already has a map of locations announced throughout the state where signatures can be collected if you'd like to sign. That's some pretty aggressive organizing. This is going to be a race to watch. to say the least. I don't know how it turns out. I make no predictions, but Allie Ism and Becky Edwards obviously plan to campaign seriously against Senator Mike Lee as Republicans. So we'll see. And, of course, you have independent Evan McMullen in that race. No word from the Democrats yet, though, interestingly enough, rumors and rumblings inside the Democratic Party that party faithful, party insiders want the Democrats to not field a candidate in this race. Let it play out between the 3 Republicans and 1 independent on the ballot, which is likely going to be the way that ballot looks after the primary season ends in June. So we'll see how this takes shape. But Becky Edwards and Allie Ism getting off first official day they could here of the year, collecting signatures and making it official, filing for office here in Utah in Salt Lake City this afternoon. Check it out. I've posted a link to the Fox 13 story, and we'll be back after this look at the news with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KBNU News Time is 5:35, and the news is brought to you by Northern Steel Building. A 60-year-old Logan man has been arrested for allegedly sexually abusing a young boy years ago. David M. Davis was booked into the Cache County Jail last Thursday after a warrant was issued for his arrest. Davis was arraigned during a virtual hearing in First District Court this afternoon. He was charged with 8 counts of sodomy on a child, a first-degree felony. According to the arrest warrant, Logan City police officers began investigating Davis after a man who is now 26 years old claimed he had been sexually abused multiple times when he was a child during the age of 5 to 12 years old. In 1993, Davis was working at as a respiratory therapist at a hospital in Bountiful. He was arrested and later convicted for sexually abusing an 18-year-old patient. The victim had previously experienced a brain injury and had the mental capacity of a child. Davis spoke only briefly during today's hearing, providing the court his name and date of birth. He was ordered to remain in jail and appear again in court on Wednesday. He could face up to life in prison if convicted. In nearly 22 months of the pandemic, Utah's record for the highest one-day count of positive coronavirus cases was 4,706 on December 30th, 2020. In news today from the Utah Department of Health, the number of new cases from the New Year weekend includes a near record 4,659 on Thursday and a 4-day weekend total of 14,754 new cases in the state. It's an average of nearly 3,700 each day of the weekend, boosting the state's rolling 7-day average for positive tests the last 22 months to 3,346 a day. The COVID report of 17 new weekend deaths from the virus includes a Box Elder County woman between 45 and 64 years of age who was hospitalized at the time of her death. There have been 3,804 coronavirus deaths in Utah, 196 of them in Cache, Box Elder, and Rich counties. And there were 744 new COVID cases found in northern Utah since last Thursday. The district's total case count grew to 36,355, and there are now 34,661 considered to be recovered. Within the district, 1,688 people have been hospitalized over the course of the pandemic. And a man was arrested after reportedly kidnapping, threatening, and assaulting a woman for several weeks. Police said they arrived to a residence in Salt Lake City. The man who called police told an officer the victim had texted him, stating she was scared for her life and begged for help. KUTV reports 39-year-old Ramon Martinez was detained at the residence after he answered the door, and officers noticed what appeared to be a handgun in his hoodie pocket. The weapon was taken after police detained him. According to a probable cause statement, the victim was found injured with heavy bruising around both eyes. She told them her ribs were hurting and she had trouble breathing, and told police that the woman told officials she was assaulted for several weeks and threatened to be killed. She said during that time she was unable to leave or go anywhere freely. without Martinez. KBNU News Time is 5:39.
A building is just a building until it's your building. It's where you work, where you create, and where you store your valuable equipment. You take pride in your building, so make sure it's built right and built to last. Northern Steel Buildings will guide you from concept to construction. For your commercial, agricultural, or industrial steel building, visit northernsteelbuilding.com to see their quality work, or call 435-677-7300. Northern Steel Buildings. Value from concept to construction.
KBNU weather for tonight, mostly cloudy, hazy this evening, a 40% chance of snow after midnight. Low temperature overnight, 15 to 20. South winds 10 to 20 miles an hour late tonight. Snow Tuesday morning. Snow likely in the afternoon with little or no accumulation, high in the lower 30s. West winds 10 to 20 miles an hour in the morning. Snow likely Tuesday night and snow after midnight, up to 2 inches accumulation. Then snow likely, especially Wednesday afternoon with accumulations possible, but high temperatures are supposed to be all the way up into the upper 30s on Wednesday. Contrast that with 14. That's been our high. It is 12 right now at KBNU. KBNU weather is brought to you by U&I Furniture. Upgrade for less than you'd think at U&I. The number one selling mattress, Queen Therapeutic, $399, or upgrade to a Maloof, $599. Always a better buy at U&I. Downtown Logan, 28 West, 100 North. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
This is James Stevens with White Pine Funeral Services. We often hear people say, "I wish I could use White Pine, but I've already paid for arrangements elsewhere." Know that if you've already pre-planned with a different funeral home, you can still call White Pine. If you are being told you'll lose up to 25% of your money, White Pine will provide a discount equal to any fee for switching. If you have any questions, please stop by for a visit or give us a call. We would love to meet you and explain in more detail.
White Pine Funeral Services, here when you need us most.
This is Detective Johnson from the Logan City Police Department. Scams in our community are on the rise and innocent victims are losing thousands of dollars. These scams are coming in the form of phony phone calls claiming to be from government organizations or legitimate businesses. They are also circulating on social media and emails. Almost all of these scams are asking for payment through gift cards that are almost impossible to track. No legitimate business or organization uses gift cards as currency. If you receive a scam of this nature, do not give the scammers any information and immediately call police. Remember, pause, stop, call a cop.
Well, it's all right.
Welcome back to KBNU's For the People. Started off the show talking about this upcoming Great Salt Lake Summit on Wednesday, hosted by the Republican Speaker of the Utah House. The details on that, how you can attend, watch, etc. This panel of experts discussing the future of the Great Salt Lake and what policy changes maybe need to happen to save it. That is on our Facebook page, and we'll have some highlights from that event for you on Wednesday afternoon if you're not able to watch live or attend in person yourself. Along the same lines, later on this week, we'll be speaking with the director of the Utah Department of Energy, and it's a pleasure to be able to announce that. I've actually been working on this for 2 weeks, but scheduling just kept fighting us. But he's joining us later on this week to talk about a very large grant that Utah is in the running for. 60 participants were selected for what is basically round 3 of this granting proposal. It's a grant that comes through the recently passed infrastructure bill, and it is intended to help areas in states where transition is happening. It's a recognition that certain types of industries have seen a decline over the last few years in popularity and demand, coal being one of those, and that leaves 2 areas here in Utah, the Uinta Basin area and the Garfield area, hurting quite a lot. They put all their eggs in these baskets, and now those baskets aren't worth as much as they were 10 years ago. Those trends are probably not turning around, and so what happens? I've talked about this on the show many times. I I'm all for transitioning away from dirty energy. I would prefer that we get to a point soon where we're not burning coal at all for our electricity. At least. I think we can do a lot more than that, but I think we could get there in the next few years. Rocky Mountain Power has already announced their plan to do exactly that here in the West. So I think that kind of thing is good. But I get frustrated when people who cheer it don't recognize that there is also an impact, because I think we should help some of these communities transition if we can. Well, the alternative is you let places like Vernal become a ghost town. And I'm not exaggerating. That could happen. There are other industries in the Uinta Basin, so that probably won't happen, but it really is a possibility. You could have areas like Vernal and families there who have lived, generations in the area that suddenly have nothing, no work, no property value to speak of that they could sell and make a start somewhere else. But even if they did, having to make a start somewhere else, to leave the place that you and your grandparents and your great-grandparents maybe lived and recreated and enjoyed life, and you just have to uproot. I think we can avoid that. I think we're smart enough to avoid that. I think the United States as a whole has the money to avoid that. So I'm happy to see this happening. The grant, it could be in the hundreds of millions. And again, Utah is one of 60. Well, excuse me, this proposal here in Utah is one of 60 being considered in the third round for this grant program. That's good news because it's 60 out of thousands of proposals that were submitted. So that means the odds are pretty high. Also, there's a unwritten promise that those who aren't awarded the grant in this go-round will be first up in round 2 as this grant is ongoing. So what's it all about? Well, the director of Utah Department of Energy will be here to discuss it in detail on Wednesday's show. But in short, it's a grant that can be used by the state to help communities like those in the Uinta Basin that are seeing the decline of coal as a lucrative market, or a decline of a lucrative market for coal, basically, and help them transition away from coal-related jobs and industry, transition to something else. And that could be a whole bunch of different things. What this specific proposal is, I don't know. Again, we'll find out on Wednesday. But the announcement was made by the Utah Department of Energy last week, or 2 weeks ago, that Utah had been selected as one of the top 60 states with proposals being considered for this multi-$100 million grant. How that money could then be used to help communities transition is really not rocket science. Training for new jobs, incentives to attract new businesses in. One community in Georgia, for example, transitioned away from being so dependent on mining coal, which was also impacting them as the demand for coal was declining starting about 10 years ago. They transitioned into a solar panel manufacturing town. And now they actually have more jobs than they did when they were dependent on coal. So I don't know if that's what's being proposed for the Uinta Basin area, but we'll find out on Wednesday as we talk about this proposal that is being considered for this very large grant. With that in mind, a report today from 3 universities, the University of Utah, BYU, and the University of Idaho. They published a report this morning on the U.S. energy landscape with a specific focus on the Intermountain West and the Beehive State. It's obviously, as I've been discussing, there are some inevitable transitions. And so that the report reflects that. The report basically says a lot of things are in flux right now when it comes to the energy landscape of the Intermountain West and Utah. But the 14 researchers, again, from the University of Utah, BYU, and the University of Idaho, in this published report, it's a comprehensive renewable energy report. And what they did is they looked at more than 300 peer-reviewed studies, technical reports, and publications to basically take all of that, wrap it up into a nice, easy-to-digest overview of how energy is changing in the Intermountain West, specifically when it comes to, as I mentioned, the decline of coal, the rise of renewable energy, and the impact that's having on the global economy, not just Utah's, not just the Intermountain West. It's a fascinating thing, and it's a dose of reality, I would say, for all sides, political sides of this issue. Those who feel we're moving too fast away from things like coal and mining of certain minerals, and those who feel that we aren't doing enough and should just throw the switch tomorrow to move away from these things. I think the report is a wake-up call for both of those extremes. One of the authors of the report, Ben Abbott, he's an assistant professor of ecosystem ecology at BYU, and one of the 14 co-authors of this report. He said in discussing the report itself during an interview with Salt Lake Media this morning, he said the rising cost of fossil fuels and the emergence of cheaper renewable energies is one of the main reasons that the landscape is changing. But, as I mentioned, talking about places like Uinta Basin, Garfield County, there are challenges. Abbott said renewables have been making huge advances in both their performance and their cost. It's now cheaper to produce power, we found, with solar and wind than any other energy source. It's the cheapest electricity that's ever been available in the United States, cheaper even than natural gas. He said that the report also, though, shows that while the intermittency of wind and solar has been a major obstacle to their wide adoption as a replacement for dirtier fuels for electricity production, is being met by advances in technology, one of which, by the way, is being tested by Logan City, a battery system being tested by Logan City in a pilot program there. Abbott said he references that, and he says such pilot programs are going to be the future of these programs. We will perfect this. But he said, according to the report, according to their research, which was, again, just basically collecting research and putting it together in a one-stop shop kind of overview, said expanding electricity transmission, increasing flexibility of supply and demand, and building excess generation capacity to limit dips in any source of electricity is going to require an investment, and our report shows again and again that that investment is overdue. The need to deploy distributed energy resources. I'll put this in my own words, because I've been going on about this on the show, I think the entire time I've been here. Going on 14 years. I have said, based on one book I read that scared the living daylights out of me, we need to upgrade our grid. There's technology out there we can't take advantage of that at very least would make our or our energy consumption more efficient, even if we didn't change anything else. But we can't use it because our grid is so old. Now, granted, other countries have the luxury of just having constructed their first ever grid. That's why theirs is new. Others have actually invested in theirs. Nordic countries, for example, just spent billions over the last 5 years upgrading their grids to take advantage of this new technology. We have not, and that's frustrating to me that we haven't. The report really hammers this home. The report says, not just public demand, not just market demand, there is also an environmental reason to move away from fossil fuels. No one argues about that. But they said in their report, again, which was a report collecting, hundreds of other reports, technical publications, research, etc. They said about 200,000 people every year, it's estimated, die prematurely in the United States because of pollution, air pollution alone. And globally, of course, that number would be larger. It could be 10.2 million is one of the estimates they said was fit within the parameters of the data they saw. So the negative health effects are another reason, Abbott said. Current estimates of how much damage is done by fossil fuel pollution puts around $1 trillion a year to the United States and about $10 trillion a year globally. That's the cost of dirty fuels, he said, which oftentimes doesn't get discussed in energy policy discussions. Abbott said their report is hoping to make this easier to understand, make it easier for policymakers and the public to understand the full picture of all this. Abbott said as they were doing this research, what they were finding was keeping him up at night. He says, I have 4 kids, and I don't want them breathing dirty air. I don't want them facing the situation we could be facing even 10, 20 years from now if we don't make some improvements today. And he said their report really drives home there is plenty of room for improvement. Utah, though, is in a unique position, the report says. The report says that Utah has been influenced very heavily by fossil fuel production. Obviously, we know that, and we talked about it a little bit with coal and things like that. But Abbott says in their report they found that coal, natural gas, crude oil, all these things that Utah's been dependent on for a long time for a lot of different reasons, it in no way means Utah doesn't have the capacity to actually be a leader with renewable energy, because Utah has some of the best solar resources in the entire northern continent. The research found that if you were going to really make an effort to transition to solar, Utah would be one of the prime places that you'd want to look. And Utah, the report says, has already begun to capitalize on this. Utah cities, for example, can now already opt into 100% renewable agreements with Rocky Mountain Power, something no other state in the Intermountain West is doing yet. So, Abbott says the report is eye-opening and even frightening, but it wraps up with a real ray of hope, if you will. Get it? Solar. Check it out. I've linked to the report on our Facebook page. Again, the research done by 14 different researchers at BYU, University of Utah, and the University of Idaho, published just today, showing that the U.S. energy landscape is changing and Utah is well-positioned. Check it out. I've linked to it on our Facebook page. We'll be back right after this.
This is Dr. Red, chiropractic physician with Red River Health and Wellness. Are you suffering with fatigue, brain fog, headaches, intestinal issues, weight gain, and you haven't been able to find any answers?
I've constantly been fighting with my weight and thyroid issues for more than 25 years, and none of the doctors in 25 years have ever been able to explain to me what Hashimoto's is, what it means to me, and how to manage it.
Red River Health and Wellness can help you.
Today, my life is like the minute I get out of bed, I hit the ground running. I'm ready to go. I want to see what today is going to bring, what adventures I'm going to have without pain and with all the energy to do everything that I want to do.
Our goal is to teach you and educate you so you know how to manage your condition a lot more effectively and you know what to do and what not to do for the rest of your life. With our satisfaction guarantee, you have nothing to lose.
Call Red River at 855-55-RIVER to schedule an in-depth consultation absolutely free. All appointments can be done remotely by FaceTime, Skype, or phone.
This year, let's do Ski-Doo all winter, no matter the weather, because you've got to love that Ski-Doo feeling. So start off the season with the ultimate winter fun machine and get into gear to discover our state's beautiful landscapes. Take your whole family on an adventure filled with fun through marked trails and snow-covered mountains. Come meet the Ski-Doo experts and learn about the current promotions at Frank May Ski-Doo in Honeyville. Rest assured you'll get a fair deal. Frank May Ski-Doo is a two-time gold medalist in the 2021 Best of Northern Utah contest.
The best high school basketball in the state is being played in Northern Utah, and every Region 11 high school basketball team is broadcast on local radio and now video streaming on CashValleyDaily.com. All the games are covered on air and online with a dedicated broadcast crew for each school. Listen or watch the exciting action of every game, and after the game is over, go back and watch it again. All the details are available right now on CashValleyDaily.com. High school hoops, the biggest games of the week.
When I grow up, I want to be a new pair of blue jeans.
When I grow up, I want to be a kid's first computer.
When I grow up, I don't want to be a piece of garbage. And if you recycle me, I won't be.
Give your garbage another life. Recycle. Learn how at iwanttoberecycled.org. Brought to you by Keep America Beautiful and the Ad Council.
That is our show for today. Thank you for tuning in. Tomorrow on the program, the For the People Book Club. Our good friend Craig Peterson will be here in the studio with us to talk not about one specific book. We'll kick off 2022's first book club episode talking about all the work of C.S. Lewis. That's with Craig Peterson in studio for the For the People Book Club. Also talk about more about Utah's energy future and Utah in line for a big grant to help some communities transition away from dirty fuels. Also, this is going to be one to keep an eye on, of course. What does it mean for this upcoming generation that they've grown up until recently never having known the United States to not be at war? Regular live shooter trainings at school are just a part of their life. They came of political age over the last few years and saw the politics of now, as ugly as they are, and they're starting to become a big voting bloc. Well, some research by political scientists showing this might be one of the most unique generations we've seen in a generation. We'll talk about what the research says about Generation Z as they become a major voting bloc. That's tomorrow on For the People. Dave Ramsey next.